Hello, I'm Eric from Eric Labs, and today I'm going to show you how to download, install, and get started with Eric's Robot Backer-Upper. First thing you're going to want to do is go to www.robotbackerupper.com. First page you come to is a summary page. It shows some of the features of the software. We're going to want to go to the Downloads tab. Here it'll tell you what the latest version of the Backer-Upper is. And there's two options here. You can download the full installer, which installs a brand new copy of this version. The executable only will just download the executable, so if you've already gone through the install and you just want to update, this is the one you pick. Today we're going to just download the installer. Click Run. Sometimes your virus scanner might scan this and check it over. So just continue through that, and then you'll be brought to this wizard. Just a normal installer. So typical license agreement, accept that. And I'm just going to leave it in the default location. You can change the path where it gets installed if you want. I'm going to leave the default name, no desktop icon for me, install. And when it gets done, you can choose to launch it, so I'm going to launch it. And since the version we downloaded is not licensed, it's just a demo version, you'll have this nag screen at the beginning asking you to license it. If you want to license it, you can take this key here that it gives you, copy that out, and then you go to the registration tab on the website, paste it in, go through PayPal, it'll give you a key to unlock it. You would paste that here, then you click the register now. For now, we'll just continue the demo. In the demo version, you can only have one project with one robot. So over here, these are your projects, and these are your robots. So if you had multiple customers, you might add multiple projects here, and in each of those projects, you would have robots belonging to those customers, so that you don't have to keep track of IP addresses or robot names or any of that stuff. So you can go back and forth between projects, and it'll automatically remember what robots were added. In this case, it comes with an example project. It's a FANUC example. So when it's a FANUC robot, you have all these options you can perform on the robot. If you go to Properties, here's where you set the brand. So you can choose between generic or FANUC. And this is the name of the robot. You can put whatever you want in there. Can't have spaces in it. This is the robot IP address, so you can enter that in there. F number if you want it. MAC address if you want it. What these do is if you want to confirm that the robot you're working with is actually the robot you're downloading or backing up or sending files to or whatever, just interacting at all, you can have it check that its MAC address matches so that you know it's confirmed that it's hardware-wise it's the right robot. Source code folder will allow you to access source code folder through links and KCL credentials if you want them. So, well, I'll change this to a generic robot, and you'll see some of this stuff goes away because F number doesn't apply, so it's just robot identifier. You can still check the MAC address, but if it's a generic robot, you lose a lot of the options that you had in there before. You go back into Properties and change it back to FANUC, and those come back. So here's all the things you can do with it. You want to go to the robot's web page or connect to an FTP, you can go to the Vision Setup page, run CF files, image backup, restore, put files, synchronize the clock, cycle power, all this great stuff you can do with FANUC. Right now, FANUC is the only robot supported, so some of the other features are not as useful because it's just for FANUC robots. So for now, I'm going to show you how to do a backup, and what I'm going to do, I have a virtual robot running on this machine, so I'm going to delete this guy, and so now I'll delete that too. I'll add a localhost. Localhost is a special project. Here's it's saying that it's a demo version, so you're limited to one project. You can add more projects, but you're only going to be able to see one at a time in this list here. So I'm just going to say yes. And it's a special name, localhost, one word. So when you add localhost, it's going to check on the local machine where the backup is running to see if there's any virtual machines running. And it did find one. And I do have one running. It's a Handling Pro. And it has one robot in there. So it generates this name automatically. You go to properties, you can't set the name. It just comes up with, this is the name of the project in RoboGuide, and this is the name of the robot in RoboGuide. So it puts those two together and comes up with a name. Here's the ports it's running on, if you ever need to know that, because if you have multiple versions of, or multiple instances of a virtual robot, you might need to know what specific ports it's using on the local machine. So in this case, we have our localhost project and our single robot. You can't add robots to this project because it automatically detects them. If you want to refresh, you'd say you start another instance of RoboGuide or something, or add another robot, you can do refresh. It'll detect them. And if you want to go to the robot neighborhood and view all the robots that are in your robot neighborhood, you can click that. So under setup, there's backup and preferences. Backup will allow you to set up different types of backup settings. Here's the connection type, shotgun or sequential. Shotgun will back up multiple robots at once. Sequential just does one robot, then when it's done, it goes on to the next one. The backup directory structure, this is how it's going to be laid out when it does a backup. It's going to have a robot /date /time. That's the one that's best supported. This one also allows you to have date time robot. That one, some of the functions don't work as far as like comparing and things like that. So it's best to use the original backup structure. Suppress TP comments. You can have it turn off the comments on the Teach Pennant programs before it downloads them, so it leaves them out. And authenticate robot by identifier. That's basically checking if the F number matches. And sometimes the F number isn't always set in robots, so it's not always a good idea to use that. It's better to use the MAC address, so you can authenticate by the MAC address, which means it'll go out and check that the robot MAC address matches before it downloads. That way it knows it's dealing with the right robot. Backup sources. For FANUC robots, this is a MD, and you can choose to back up the FR or not. Here's all the file types currently for FANUC, and you can add file types of your own with their own descriptions. These are the most common ones, so all files are what we'll be backing up today. And if you add generic robot, this is you could add in your files there. Currently not supported. FANUC is the only one supported. Okay, so under setup there's also preferences. This is enable advanced features. So when you right click on a robot, you can have some of the advanced features that you use less often show up all the time, or you can have them not show up. And you can choose to have them just hidden or disabled. So this makes the right click menu on a robot more manageable. Overwrite protected files when putting robots on FANUCs. Sometimes you might have a file that's write protected on the robot. This will try to go out and unwrite protect it before putting the file. So when you send files out to the robot, it'll try to unwrite protect it, then put it. Download detailed errors. When you back up a robot, or when you send a file to a robot, sometimes if you made a syntax error in like an LS file, this will go out and try to figure out what line it failed on. So it'll connect to the robot, grab the error log, and then display the line number and everything that it failed on. So this is handy if you're putting a lot of LS files out to a robot, that it'll tell you what line and possibly other information about what's wrong with it. You can drag and drop files to the robot backupper from Windows Explorer, and this is how it gets handled. So if you have the robot highlighted, meaning it's just selected but it's not check marked, then that's where the files will be dropped to. If you have this one selected, then anything that's check marked is where it'll be dropped. Now the difference between these is you can only highlight one robot at a time, but you can select or check mark as many as you want. So you can dump a ton of files to multiple robots using this one. This is just a single robot. Recall project filter. You can filter projects by name on the main screen, like up in this area here, this text box. You can filter it out. So if you have a lot of projects, but you only want to show maybe a few of them, like a lot of times you'll have a project with it starts with a project number and then a description. You can filter out like maybe just your latest project numbers by putting something up there. And then robot filter, same thing. You can filter robots by name in that text box up here. Check for updates. You can if you want it to check every time it starts up, there will be a little bit of delay when it starts up. It'll be checking for updates. What it does is goes out to the website. Well, first of all, it'll check to see if the internet's available, so it won't waste your time if the internet's not available. If the internet is available, it'll go out to the Robot Backer-Upper website and see what the latest version is. You can do that automatically on startup, or you can just do it every once in a while in here, or you can visit the website and take a look. IP address management. This is when you change projects, it can keep track of what IP address goes with that project, because a lot of times you'll have a project, different customers will have a different IP address naming scheme that they want, or numbering scheme that they'll want to use, and instead of having to remember what that was and always change your IP address, you can assign a network profile to a project, and then every time you pick on that, you can have it automatically switch, or you can have it prompt you saying your IP address doesn't match what it's expecting. Do you want to change it? And then it'll change it. Or if you select manual, it will just completely ignore your IP address, and then you'll have to deal with it manually. Here's all the third-party programs you can assign. The compression program, so when you want to compress backups. Terminal program, this is the one you're going to use for Telnet, KCL, SMON, that sort of thing. FTP program, this is if you want to use something besides Robot Backer-Upper to get into FTP. The FTP on Robot Backer-Upper basically just goes out, backs up the robots, and it's done. If you need to do other things in there, like maybe change folders, add folders, things like that, you can go through FTP here. Database, this is the database where the configuration for the Robot Backer-Upper is stored. There's also an INI file that goes with it. The database basically stores information regarding robots and projects, and the INI file is kind of just user interface stuff, the status of that. Default backup root directory, that's just where the backups are going to go by default. So remember we had the robot date time, it'll tack those directories on after this. Default source code directory, you can specify the source codes per robot, but if you don't specify it, this is the global one that it'll use. So those are the main features of getting into the backups. Now we'll do a backup here real quick. So I select the robot I want to back up. The ones that are check marked are the ones that are going to be backed up. So right now backup's disabled because nothing's check marked. If I had multiple robots, I can pick any one of them. I can check mark all, uncheck mark all, invert selection, or you can just pick it based on availability. So if the robot's not connected, it won't select it. This column here shows you if the robot's available. So if it's a X, it's not available. If it's a dot, it is available. So you have a little green dot when it is available, and a little red X when it's not. So when you select availability based on availability, it will go out, check to see what robots are out there, and then only select the ones that are available. So we've got this selected. We'll click backup. So here's our robot. You can see this puts a list of the robots. Green means it's it's good. It's currently downloading because it's pointing down. This is the path it's downloading. This is the file it's grabbing. This is the progress so far. Here's the results of the download. So this is where it puts the files. So if I was backing up multiple robots at a time, there'd be a list of them going here, and you could click on those and it would show you the status of what the files as they're coming in. If something went wrong, it would give you a failed indicator here and possibly what went wrong. And then it would, if there was a failure, this would turn red. If you're putting files, this arrow will be an upload. It'll point up, it'll be an upload. So you can kind of watch it downloading. We're doing all files because if you remember in our setup backup of the file types, we picked all files. So that's why it's taking a little bit of time here. But it's currently backing up a virtual robot. So we'll let this cruise through and complete. And if you wanted to add a comment to this backup, like you could put in a comment, and then where this will put it is it'll put a notes.txt in that backup folder, and then you can always go back and look at that notes.txt. Sometimes you get a lot of backups, and you might be making changes and doing backups, and you want to keep track of maybe what changes were in that backup. So that's where that notes comes in. It's just a short message in there you can put in that will remind you what was in that backup if you need to know. And once it's complete, transfer complete. If there were errors, it would say transfer completed with errors, and then you could go through and scroll down and see, okay, these are all good, but if something was wrong, you'd see the status show you that something was wrong. This is the time it took to back it up. This is the current connection count. Right now it's not doing any backups, so it's no connections. And one's completed. If there were multiple robots, you'd see these things changing based on which ones were done and which ones are completed. This button, you can do a cleanup. It'll kind of clean this thing up. And under here, options, you can set up close transfer window if everything's completed successfully. So if all the transfers for all the robots come in and they were good, you can set this to just automatically close this window so you don't have to see it. Auto cleanup, if a single transfer finishes successfully, you can have, instead of having to click the cleanup, you can just have it removed from the list automatically. And then auto cleanup, normally when you try to do a backup of maybe the same robot twice, if there's still some information in this transfer window, it won't let you because it wants you to acknowledge that you've looked at the previous backup and handled it how you want to. If it's a good backup, then you can do a cleanup and then start a new backup. That's where these things come in. I automatically clean up if I start another transfer and that robot, it's not currently being backed up, but it was backed up and completed. You can have it auto clean up and start a new one. If it doesn't do this auto cleanup, it'll tell you, hey, there's a transfer pending, or it needs to be cleaned up. That way, you know that you've gone through and looked and made sure you know what errors came down or it completed successfully. And then here, this will prompt you saying if you've already got one backing up and you try to start another backup. Only one backup at a time per robot, so you can't just have one running and then start a new one and not have cleaned it up. So that's where you get into this stuff. So this kind of handles how this window is done. And you close that. And while the transfer window is open, you can come back and just let it run, and you can kind of do your other things here. So there's some other things here, manage backups. So here's our backup we just did. So you can see I did a backup earlier. So this is a backup I did earlier, just prepare for this. And then here's the backup we did now. So in there, if you want to do a compare, this managing utility kind of allows you to check, compare different backups. So you can right-click, set master backup, set compare backup, and then we can check for missing files, check for extra files, check for different files. Here's the file types it's going to check. We're going to check them all. And for LS files, those are usually teach printed programs that are in ASCII format, and a lot of things will throw off a compare, like line numbers in the program, or just positional data, or maybe a comment spelled differently between two programs. You can you can choose to throw out different things. If you do a smart compare, it will it'll clean up the line numbers, and you can have it ignore the header because the header might have a different timestamp in it. You can have it include or exclude positional data because you might have two programs that are logically the same but have different positions because they're different robots. So you can have that included or whatever. Comments, line comments, you can have ignored. Line descriptors, so this would be like a comment for a register. And motion attributes, you can have it not care if it's continuous or fine or things like that. So we can do a quick compare here. So you set your master, that's the one that you say is the master backup, and then you want to compare it to this one, and we can do a compare. So this one has 118 extra files, 13 different files, and 0 missing files. So here's your master. These are all the files that are different, and you can kind of get a key here. This is a binary compare, 1 and 0. These are text compare. So these are binarily compared, and they're different. Here, earlier I did a LS only backup, and so the second backup we did was a backup all. So you can see the LS files, these are all different. These are not program files, but they're kind of just status files that go along with it. And then these are all the new files that came down. And then down here it gives you a little summary, 118 extra files, and 13 of them were different. So that's kind of a nice utility for comparing. And then if you want to, you can explore backup. You can right-click these and you can explore backups. You can view a program in an editor, and that's pretty much it for this. And so it's a nice little utility for comparing programs to kind of see what changed from backup to backup. There's two modes for doing compares. There's absolute mode and relative mode. So absolute means this is the master, and you can pick multiple compares, and what it will do, it will compare all those back to the master. Relative mode means that you set a master and then it'll check the backup after that one to the previous backup, and then so it kind of goes through time and goes back and checks the backup against the previous one, so you can kind of get an idea of how it changed over time, not just how it compares to the master backup. So you can play with these and figure out how that works a little bit better. You can archive backups. You can let me clear these things out here. So if you can archive the backup, you can explore a backup, you can delete a backup. Archive backup will use your compression program that you have chosen here or on the main setup window to archive it, and then once it's archived, it won't show up in here anymore. Once it's archived, it'll be gone, and it'll just be backed up, and you can get it back through Windows. This is where the archive is going to be going. Yeah, auto clear on robot node collapse. That means if you collapse this node, it would clear out. So if I had this as a master and this is a compare, and then I collapse it, it clears those out automatically instead of having to right-click clear, right-click clear. And then you can do compare program, so you can compare not just in here, but you can send files out to like WinMerge or something, using that compare program. By default, it just compares them in here. Properties, this will show you properties of the backup. So this is when it was backed up, the name of the robot was backed up, the backup directory it's in. Here's the files that I was expecting to have come down. These are the actual count in there. And the actual count, there will be sometimes files that a compare program or something might make that don't need to be counted in. So you might have actual count that's more than the expected count. So that's not don't worry about these not matching. Then that's for MD. This is for FROM. These are the file types that backed up. Here's the notes that we entered in for the backup, and this tells you if it's been archived or not. View the log. So the log file is one of those files in here that it doesn't get pulled down from the robot, but it gets generated as it's being made. So if you do a view the log, it'll show you, basically everything that had happened during the backup. So it has all the status that it showed on the main transfer page when you were backing up. So you can get to the log there, so you can kind of view how that went. So that's kind of it for the managing portion of it. So that gives you kind of a rough idea of how it works, and hope you enjoyed this presentation.